Hello, Liverpool fans. Welcome to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. Coach Ralph and I are excited to bring you this podcast. From games to players to club news, we cover everything LFC. You can find us on every platform and YouTube. Please take a second to follow or subscribe to the podcast. That way, you know when the latest podcast is up. Thank you for listening, and now on to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Salim, and I'm joined by my other co-host, Coach Ralph. Coach, how you doing today?
I am doing great, Salim, and a happy red, as I'm sure most are, after 2 wins out of 2.
Yeah, 2 pretty good performances, 2-0 wins, 6 points on the board. This game was definitely a step up in competition a little bit, but also first game for Arne Slot at Anfield. And Coach, I got to be honest, I was very impressed at what the potential of this team could be. There was just some really, really well played passing, interplay. It was really, really fun to watch. There was one part, I think, in the 60th minute when it almost looked like Arsenal back in the day with Arsene Wenger when they had all those stars. It was really, really beautiful to watch.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I think they carried on from where they left off in the second half against Ipswich. Possession, moving the ball at speed. And I'm not sure if it's the 60th minute, but was that the move where it was kind of one touch all the way down the field? And Brentford kind of thwarted them at the end. And to be honest, I thought Brentford did very, very well defensively because Liverpool many, many times got into great situations, but either the goalkeeper made a big save or there was a last-ditch tackle. And Brentford gave them a good test, I felt, and it was definitely a step up from game one.
Yeah, the interplay I'm talking about was the one in the box when Mo Salah kind of cut in from the right-hand side, and the ball just kind of pinged to McAllister, to Szoboszlai. It looked really good. But you're right, the stuff that was going on in the middle, that's one of the things I noted specifically was how they're kind of exploding out of the midfield with a couple passes and then somebody carrying the ball forward. You can almost even kind of hear the stadium, like just the level go up when the couple, 1-2 passes and then it'd be at Szoboszlai and he's charging forward, and the explosion out of the midfield is just something a little bit different that Arne Slot's bringing to the team. It's really, you can kind of see there's going to be a lot of really good movements and goals, team goals coming, versus depending on, the Jurgen Klopp style, which, win the ball, first pass forward, and, you had 3, great forwards in Jurgen's time that really could kind of take on the defense. So this is very, very interesting how it's shaping up, how it's changing. But then again, the first goal, just a Jurgen Klopp perfect right type of goal, just a lightning counterattack.
Yeah. It was very much a goal reminiscent of what we've seen in recent years. And I think that what's happening right now, changes that Arne Slot has made, I think, are quite subtle at this point. And I think that we've got to play more games. We've got to see them play different kinds of opponents, as they will on Sunday. And then once they get into the Champions League games, and just to see how the Reds kind of adapt in each situation, in each game. And I think that'll give us an indication of where Slot might differ from his predecessor. Right now, I think the changes are subtle, but what I think he's been fortunate in was that last season, the players that were recruited in midfield were a little bit different from before. So you've got, well, it's totally new, isn't it? You've got Gravenberg, you've got McAllister, and you've got Szoboszlai.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that they were different kinds of midfielders. Maybe Gravenberch was a little bit more like his the players before. But I think Szoboszlai and McAllister are slightly different style. They have different strengths. And I think, as I say, I think over time that we'll start to see what the differences are between the Jurgen Klopp style and the Arne Slot style as the season evolves.
Yeah, back to the goal, Coach. I mean, the pass that Jota kind of put into space to free up Diaz was perfectly timed. He passed it early, which I thought was a really, really smart play. And Diaz just kind of, with his left foot, just goes short post and high, and I mean, unstoppable.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because everybody kind of highlights the fact that Jota is a finisher, and he is. But he also drops into midfield a bit like Firmino or a Harry Kane. And he's shown that he's got a little bit of vision as well. So is this something that we're going to see as a recurring theme as we play game to game through the season? It'll be very interesting to see.
Yeah, and Diaz was lively again, huh?
Well, Diaz is a runner. I mean, like, he likes to run with the ball. He likes to take men on. He's positive going forward. But the question mark, as you well know, is does he have a consistent record when it comes down to finishing? And maybe he will, maybe he won't. We have to wait and see on that. But he does score goals, so it's not like he never scores. And it's the same when he plays with his national team. He's somebody that they can rely on with Colombia to score. Mm-hmm. So maybe he's not Sadio Mane in terms of his numbers, but he's I could say he's useful to have. I'd say he's very good to have.
For sure. Brentford had a couple chances. Norgard missed a pretty open header in the 31st minute, and Lewis Potter had a cut back and a shot with his right foot in the 43rd. But there was, I think, one more chance that they had in the second half that Alisson saved and then kind of punched away, and then that was it. I mean, it was really good defensively.
Right. I mean, the biggest chance was that last one that you mentioned, because I thought he really should have scored there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if he'd headed the ball down, it would have been harder for the keeper. But Alisson stood up to him because he was pretty close. And he stood up to him, and he does what the goalkeeper's supposed to do, and what Alisson Becker does all the time, makes the save. So yeah, it was very good by Becker, and I think he's going to have a lot of games that he's had in the past where he's not called upon much, but he's got to be ready for the moment when it comes.
Yeah, the commentators kept talking about how Liverpool was getting back on defense and numbers and sprinting back, and it was something they commented on. And I was thinking back to the Jurgen Klopp era, and was thinking, I'm pretty sure that happened back then, but I was the one person that kind of really surprised me, like sprinting back, and was Trent. And not because he doesn't get back, it's because normally he's so far up and down the field that if he gets caught up the field after making a long run, that it's hard then to turn around and sprint back 90 yards. And he was getting back, and I thought to myself, well, maybe this is another major or minor difference in the Slot versus Klopp era, is that he's not so relied upon to just fly up the field, him and Robo, that they're able to kind of get back on defense pretty quickly without just being exhausted by running up and down, although they do get up and down.
Right. So yeah, we've got to see over time how that develops, because under Jurgen Klopp, I think Trent Alexander-Arnold was pretty much given license to go forward, and he used to get into some ridiculous positions offensively, and then they lose the ball, and of course the tactic became the other team would stick somebody out in the left wing, and then he's having to really burst his lungs trying to get back. And so I I always felt sorry for him from that respect. And I don't think that enough pundits really pointed that out when they talk about his defending, because he really had to do two things, and it wasn't easy at all from a physical point of view. But I think the Trent situation is going to be interesting, because you've got a situation where he's in his last year of the contract. He didn't look happy at the end of the game, which I'm assuming was to do with the fact that for the second successive game, he's hooked. And so you really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Is he going to sign a new contract, or is he going to see out the year? And maybe the manager feels that he's got to give Bradley time. And obviously Bradley, bringing him on, he's more of a winger type fullback, I would say, than Trent Alexander-Arnold, because Trent, even though he can get high, he's got tremendous vision from deep to cross or to play a pass. I think Bradley plays very high up the field, and he's almost like a winger, an auxiliary winger, as it were. So is he giving Bradley time? Wants him to get experience? Because I guess if Trent Alexander-Arnold were to leave at the end of the season, that Bradley would be the man to step in.
Yeah, I think, and I understand Trent being upset, but we have a long season, and I think Slots kind of just understands that and realizes that he's got to keep his guys fresh. And the fact that you can bring in a Bradley that you could say is better defensively than Trent is kind of locking the game down, from one theory. But it's good to get these guys a break and bring on some guys that really aren't too far of a drop off in different aspects, though.
Yeah, I do agree with that point that you're making, Salim. But I think from a dynamics point of view, if you look at the Ipswich game, I thought Robertson looked off pace. And then both he and Trent, I think they were subbed at the same time in that game, or very close in time, and they brought on other guys. Now, I thought Robertson looked more up to it this week.
Yeah.
No doubt he's working hard on his fitness and, putting his injury woes behind him. So Robertson played the whole game. Trent didn't. So I don't know if there's a dynamic there. There could also be the dynamic, arguably, that maybe the manager doesn't feel that Tsimikas, even though he's done pretty well since Slot is there, is at the same level and at the same potential as Bradley, because Bradley appears to have the potential to be a top fullback. Tsimikas, I think most Reds would agree, is a decent deputy.
Yeah.
So he didn't hook Robertson this week, but he did with Trent. So again, I don't know if there's a dynamic. You can read too much into these kind of situations, but it was clear to see at the end of the game that Alexander-Arnold wasn't a happy camper. So it's going to be something to follow. How will this develop?
Yeah, I think he needs to be. We can't just let him go on a free, and that's the worry here, because he is so talented. And I really wouldn't be too upset with his decision to join like a Real Madrid if he were to do that, because he has won everything here in Liverpool, and he's 25. I mean, he's basically got one big contract ahead of him. It's from one standpoint, it is an ideal time to kind of explore your options, but also being a one club player, like Carragher and Gerrard, also he's got captain written all over him at some point. But it would be a shame to see such a great homegrown talent leave. But I think also, on the other hand, like I said, you can understand.
Correct. So, I mean, it's an interest. Well, it's a dilemma. It's a dilemma for the club if he's not going to sign. Do they sell him in January? Obviously, it would be for reduced money. But then, depending on how it's going in the season, if Liverpool's in a good situation, are you weakening the team? So there's that side of the coin, and really applies to the other two as well, Van Dijk and Mo Salah. So I think we're kind of hoping that like the laddie from Sociedad that didn't go in the end because they appealed to his the locale and his connections and everything, that there'd be something similar for Trent. But think back to Steve McManaman. I think they hoped that with Steve McManaman, and he went to Madrid. So my guess is that if he doesn't sign a contract, then he's probably going to go to Madrid, or I hear that Barcelona is showing some interest as well. So who knows? Who knows? It could be either.
Yeah, and I think the transfer window, they're working hard right now, the executives and, the upper management about, just who can we bring in, who do we loan out. There's just some news that we'll cover towards the end of the podcast about that, but it could really be that, hey, we will take care of you. Just wait till, the window shuts, and then we'll start talking about your contracts, which makes total sense that you use that kind of style to make sure that you're focusing on the task at hand with bringing players in and getting players out, and then having all the players, the three players that you mentioned, have them in talks with signing a contract. So it makes sense. It's not nothing I think to really worry about right now. But him being upset was a little bit odd. Coach, the second goal, Salah, Diaz to Salah, it was very quick the way it happened. It just kind of, we won the ball back, and then I think it was McAllister to Diaz, and Diaz just found Salah all alone, and Salah kind of did his open up the body, kind of hit it a little weird. It was kind of knuckling, but curled it enough to go in far post.
Yeah, I think the finish, that he knew what he was doing. He just kind of clips it around the keeper and it curls in. So it doesn't always work, but it certainly worked on that occasion. And very good finish. In the VAR era, you're kind of going, oh, is he offside? Because whether we like it or not, we have to become accustomed to the toenail offside, and it looked very close, but I guess he was on the right side of the toenail that time around. But another good goal, and Liverpool certainly have the players who can, as we said earlier, like they can knock the ball around, they can play the ball quickly. Very good one-touch football throughout, and I think that was shown with the goal.
Yeah, and it was coming. In the 59th minute, McAllister passed a nice long pass to Trent, who was up the field, almost to the byline. Trent cut it back, and Jota hit it, and that's one of the center backs who blocked it. And you mentioned it earlier. They did have a, pretty good defensive game. The score easily could have been 4 or 5-0 if those chances weren't thwarted. I think Flecken made a great save on Diaz, on Salah, kind of cutting back the ball again from the byline. It was coming, and the 60th minute, we kind of discussed that interplay that I was talking about. And then right after Salah's goal, triple sub, and we brought in some guys to freshen it up and to get game time.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see that a lot. We saw it last season, and I think that that's the way, really, is you've got 5 substitutes now, and 3 of them, if you bring them in as a threesome, you're bringing them in, could be to freshen up, or it could be to slightly change the tactics. And then the other 2 subs, basically you're holding them off for injuries, really. But again, it depends on how the game's going, I suppose.
Yeah, Darwin came in for Jota, Gakpo in for Diaz, and Connor Bradley in for Trent. And then in the 83rd, just after Gakpo hits the post on a shot, but really good shot, Gakpo looked pretty good coming off the bench. That Harvey Elliott came in for Mohamed Salah. So it was nice to see him get some game time.
Right. Yeah, the fifth sub in that kind of occasion, I mean, like you're in the last 10 minutes. If you should get an injury, then there's only a few minutes left in the game. But I think at that point, it's giving him minutes, getting him involved, because he had a very good pre-season, as we all know. And he didn't play against Ipswich. But at the end of the day, he's going to be somebody that they're going to look to during the course of the season. So he needs to start playing.
Coach, what do you think? How do you think his mentality is? Because, you know, he was a pretty integral part to the team last year, and he got a lot of games. And, you know, not saying that he won't, but, you know, we mentioned in previous podcasts that Klopp mentioned he wished he went to Harvey a little bit earlier. But from his mindset, do you think, how does a footballer kind of think about these things? Is, you know, put your head down and work, or kind of pout? Or, I mean, you know, there's so many different ways. And we can't read, you know, we don't read these people's minds, and we're not in communication with them. But how does a footballer handle that?
I think at this level that they're all going to be disappointed if they're not playing, especially if they've done well as he has. But at the same time, I suppose you'll try to look at it in perspective. He's still young. He has good experience, and he's capable of doing it. He's already had big games for Liverpool. So he'll be disappointed, but reading his body language and his personality from a distance, he looks like the kind of boy who will knuckle down, work hard, and do his best. I think that's his mentality. What is interesting was the one change on the bench. Obviously, there was this swap of Konate and Kwanzaa, but the one change on the bench was that Gomez came in for Curtis Jones. So that is going to be an interesting development going forward, because it suggests, you know, pretty clearly that as far as the manager's concerned, as far as Arne Slot is concerned, he sees Harvey Elliott over Curtis Jones.
Yeah.
So yeah. But look, that is football at this level. Next few games, players get injured. Jones is back in. Jones gets an opportunity, does well, and I think that's why you have to have that mentality within the modern squad game. You never know when your opportunity is going to come, and you've got to relish every opportunity that you get, whether it's with the club or not. For example, Ben Doak has been selected for Scotland in the next international. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised. I doubt he'll start, but I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in off the bench. So you've got players like Doak in the background who could conceivably be loaned out. But I think players have to be ready. I think they've got to be ready, and they can sulk about it. Maybe that brings them down in the eyes of the manager. So I think that you want players who are positive.
Yeah. Overall, the game had a nice mix of build-up play, interplay, one-touch, two-touch playing, and then just going over the top. I just think that this team can win in different styles. Obviously, there are going to be more games, but it was very encouraging to me to see that it's not just one way. There's many different ways, and Luis Diaz in the first half was wide open right down the middle, and Gravenberch just mishit it, and Brentford defender was able to head it away. But there's really, really a lot of things to be happy about. Is there anything else, Coach, about the game that stood out to you?
I think you've hit most of the main points, Salim. It was just a good early season performance. Brentford are a little bit underrated. As I believe that I said in the preview to the game, I think they've got a great manager in Thomas Frank, and I think he's very adaptable. And they were competing with Liverpool, and the one point that Slot made at the end of the game was it took his team too long to kill it off, and really they didn't have many chances. But the header from the free kick, they really should have scored that one. They really should have scored, and if he had, then you're in a situation where psychologically a game has been dominated. They've had chances, they've not been taken, and then the whole dynamic of the match is totally different. So yeah, I think the manager will be kind of carrying on from that and saying, look, you played well. I think we all agree on that point. You're making chances. I believe the stat is that Liverpool on the first 2 games of the season has the highest XG in terms of goal creation. But I suppose that you can say, well, they've also been playing two teams that most wouldn't rate within the top group of opponents that they could be playing. So they've been doing that at one end of the field. And I think defensively as well, they also have the best stat there. But you could say, again, Brentford and Ipswich aren't the highest scorers within the league. If they were playing the top team, City, Arsenal and company, Tottenham, would it be the same? And I think that this weekend we'll get an indication of that.
Sure. Man of the match for you?
For me, I don't know that anybody totally stood out. Obviously, Diaz caught the eye because of his pace and his positive play. Quite impressed with Szoboszlai. He's made a good start to the season. He looks dangerous running with the ball. So for me, it would probably be between those two for man of the match. I don't know what you felt.
Yeah, I thought Szoboszlai was awesome. You can tell that when you see him play for Hungary, it's a very similar style for him because he's the main guy at Hungary, and this is something that he's not running with his head cut off like he did last year. It just felt like he was just flying around. It's much more controlled. It seems like this suits him, and I think he's had 2 really good games, and I thought he was man of the match. I just thought he pulled the strings everywhere.
Yeah. Liverpool looked good in the midfield. McAllister, didn't notice McAllister, so I think there's 2 ways you can look at it. He didn't do anything exceptional, but he didn't do anything bad. He's just a solid presence. And everybody knows that he has the killer pass in him and he can pick up goals. So Liverpool looked good in the midfield. And I thought Gravenberch did well, but we have to see him tested against a team that takes the game to Liverpool more.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll really know about him as a defensive midfielder, as a number 6, until we see him in that situation.
Yeah, agreed. I think Maka had a better game than he did last game. I think the Maka that we're used to is coming. It'll happen the next couple of games. I think he's getting up to speed, and I thought Konate was really good at also.
Yeah. Liverpool look very solid at the back. They look solid, and not just at the back, but through the whole team. And they look very organised. And I know everybody or a lot of Liverpool fans still getting all wound up about transfers. But I can see a logic to not rushing into changes because it is a very good squad. I think there are similarities between the way that Arne Slot plays compared to Jurgen Klopp. So unless there's the players that they really want, do they really have to sign for the sake of signing?
Yeah, let's touch on that now. There's some news that has popped up. Mamardashvili transfer has gone through, but he's loaned back to Valencia, and he's a 6'6" goalkeeper. I think it's 35 or 40 million euros, which is a lot, but they must think of a succession plan, and I guess Kelleher is in that. I'm not sure what their thoughts are, but having him come in is a good thing. And what I thought was interesting about that transfer is that the hierarchy asked Allison about it, and he appreciated that, and he was all for it. So that's interesting. And then something that popped up yesterday is Federico Chiesa transfer potential, that Liverpool's in on it. And I think when we heard Richard Hughes talk about being opportunistic, this is a perfect example of that.
Well, Chiesa is a very good player. But I guess the question that would be in my mind is if he's coming in, who is going out? Because you're not going to get away with 6 top-class players in attack. So I think something has to give. Something has to give for that to happen. So, look, I'm sure that the manager must approve it. And he's a very talented, very good player. But somebody, this isn't Chelsea we're talking about here. We're not stockpiling players. Somebody's got to go in the other direction, really.
Yeah, and so I was listening to a couple different pundits and some podcasts about it, and the thought process is that because he's, I think, going to be between 10 and 15 million euros, it's kind of low risk, high reward, because in 2020, I think he injured himself in 2021, but in 2020, he was an 80 million, type player, and he was flying around. And you watch some of his highlights, again, highlights always show the best in the player. You can see why he was thought in that regard. But the thought process potentially is that, I know it's not a forward, but that Joe Gomez is going to look to go to either Newcastle or Crystal Palace, which would be interesting, for 40 or 45 million, which, again, we don't know these things. We just kind of hear what we hear and see what happens. But you think that we'd have to move one of the forwards in order to bring him in, or is 6? You're thinking 6 is too many?
Oh, it's way too many. I mean, Chiesa, yeah, he's coming into his later 20s.
Yeah, he's 26. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so how much are they talking about signing him for?
10 or 15 million euros.
Okay. So I guess my question would be is why is he going so cheap?
He's going so cheap because Juventus want him off their books, and he's in his last year of his contract. So they don't want to pay him what they're paying him right now. They're having some issues, and they want to bring a couple of other players in, which I think would be a lot cheaper from a salary standpoint than Chiesa.
Okay. So I would say that you're right when you talk about an opportunistic signing. But at the same time, that gives Liverpool 6 top forwards. So, yeah, look, there's a plan. Well, I hope there's a plan not just for Chiesa, but also the 3 Liverpool players that are letting their contracts seemingly run down.
Right.
So they are the powers that be. Maybe they're happy to let contracts run down with these players if they feel that it's going to help the momentum of the team, which obviously helps to generate more money in a different way than a transfer fee. But yes, there's been a lot of changes at Liverpool. I'm not totally unhappy as some are over the lack of transfer activity. They have, by the way, been adding at the academy level, like they've signed a couple of top players at the academy level. So I think that Liverpool going forward, I think that they want to bring more players from their academy through. And I think that they're giving time for the manager to settle in with the new group. It's a strong squad. It's a good squad. And let him kind of choose as he goes along where he needs to fill places. But I think if Gomez goes, then they are potentially weak at the back, central defense. I think that's a problem.
Yeah, could be for sure. The other transfer news is Bajcetic on loan to RB Salzburg. I don't think that deal's through all the way, but we were talking prior to the podcast. We both think that's a good move if it's a loan. And Tyler Morton to Bayer Leverkusen, which is very interesting. That team is so good that they want to bring him on loan. I hope he gets game time there.
Of course. So you're talking about two players who are potential number sixes for the future. Like they're going to clubs that are in the Champions League, so there's the possibility that they get experience playing at that level as well. So I think that what's happening at Liverpool is there's a lot of planning for down the road that maybe goes under the radar. And whilst I think that now is always the most important, the goalkeeper that they're signing, I don't think I've quite got to grips with his name.
Mamardashvili.
Mamardashvili, yeah. So he was outstanding in the Euros. So they've obviously seen, okay, he is a potential top-notch goalkeeper. So he will be a Liverpool player in a year's time. Do I think that they'll bring him to Liverpool in a year's time? Who knows? I think the fact that they went to Alisson Becker and talked about it shows. I think that they're looking for indications. What does he want? So just say, for example, maybe Alisson feels that he'd like to move in another year. We don't know that, maybe. Or maybe he doesn't want to move in another year. So do they bring the goalkeeper in from Valencia or do they loan him again? Because I think Chelsea did something like that years back with the Belgian goalkeeper.
Courtois.
Courtois. Yeah, he was on loan for several years before they finally brought him to London. So my gut feeling is there's the potential for something similar here. And so once he comes to Anfield, he'll probably be coming in to start. So the question is, how many years does Alisson Becker want at Anfield?
Yeah. And, what do you do with Kelleher, too?
So I guess that's another thing. Well, I think the Kelleher situation is they've got the third lad coming through, Yaros, who is already in his international squad. So I would like to think that he must be a decent goalkeeper, and he looked good in pre-season. So do they sell Kelleher eventually because he does want first-team football, and then Yaros becomes the successor? There's another couple of young goalkeepers who have promise, and in fact, there's lots of Liverpool goalkeepers or former Liverpool goalkeepers playing not just in England but in Europe, who are all internationals. So it's a really tricky position, and when I think of it over my lifetime, I mean, I've been supporting Liverpool now for just about 60 years. Liverpool have only had 9 regular goalkeepers, which is, well, it's a pretty incredible stat when you think about it. They've always, the only one that maybe didn't stay for a long time was the Dutch goalkeeper that they had back in the Julia era. Fell out with Julia. Show my age today, I can't think. Oh yes, Sander Westerveld. Sander Westerveld, and he fell out with Julia, and then they brought in Jerzy Dudek, who I don't think. I mean, he did well for Liverpool. He's a good goalkeeper, but I don't think I don't think that Rafa Benitez fancied him, and so he had the season. Obviously, it was a big season because they won the Champions League, but then in the off season he brought in Reina, and Dudek was on his way.
Yeah. Well, next game is United at Old Trafford. Great test for the team, great test for Slot and his tactics. Starting 11 for you, is it exactly the same as this game?
I think he'll keep the same team. If it was going to be a situation where I don't anticipate that Man United will take the game to Liverpool, even though the fans might want them to. I think if it was a game like that, he might be tempted maybe to play somebody like a Nunes, who plays on the break. But I think he'll play the first team. There's no real reason to change it. I would anticipate Liverpool has more possession. The game for me feels a little bit similar to 2 years ago, which was in Ten Hag's first season, and they lost the first 2 games, and then everybody expected Liverpool to go and cream them, and United raised their game and they won 2-1. And of course, we remember what happened last year as well. Games that Liverpool dominated, but they didn't win. So Manchester United haven't been that impressive so far. But I think as they showed in the Cup final, like they're capable of a performance. And the games that they held sway over Liverpool last year, I think they showed themselves in those games to be a team of moments more than anything else, than a great game plan by Ten Hag. They showed that they have the players that can do the big things at the big times, and we all know that they can. And Liverpool only had themselves to blame at the end of the day because they were 2 games that they should have won.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. They've brought in a lot of players, and I don't know how Ten Hag is going to integrate them all. But did you see the game on Friday against Brighton when it was 1-1 and like just a corner kick scramble, and I think it was Minta for Brighton just kind of was dancing around a little bit in the 18-yard box, looking to maybe go to the byline or cross it, and he's just kind of shoulder faking, and then just out of nowhere, you just see 2 Brighton players on the back post, and nobody's on them. Like nobody.
Right.
I mean, it was the easiest pass, and João Pedro just headed it back the ball the way the ball was coming, and 2-1 in the 95th minute. Good night. I mean, I understand having new players and all that, but that was almost criminal. I mean, it was really, they were wide open. It was really crazy how that broke down. But anyway, let's hope they do that against us.
Well, I think Manchester United have made better signings this year because since Ferguson retired, they've always had a tendency to sign players who are kind of name players, but usually with their best years behind them.
Yeah.
And so I think they've been more sensible this year, and I see that they've got the lad from PSG, Ugarte. Today.
That's right.
So they've been signing players who are younger, who have some potential, and are not in the twilight of their career. So it's going to come down to now how the manager organizes them, how he sets them up, and can they get them playing for each other? So Manchester United has a very talented squad.
Yeah.
But I think there are question marks around Ten Hag, but I guess he can say quite rightly, well, I've been there for 2 years and we've won 2 trophies. So I think there are things on both sides of the coin. I know that a lot of United fans aren't happy because of the style, or many say the lack of style that his teams have. So it'll be a very interesting season for Manchester United, and for their fans, it's kind of watch this picture. Let's see what develops.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure, and it's a first test. It's a derby game. I mean, it's going to be. I'm very excited for Sunday to watch this game. Coach, in other news, in fantasy soccer, you overtook me in match week 2. Yep. Where the totals are 135 to 130. You captained Erling Haaland, who had a hat trick, which forced me to make some drastic changes in my team. But it's so fun.
Well, I wish, I wish I could say I was a genius for picking Haaland, but I think the vast majority of fantasy football players have Erling Haaland in their team, so I can't claim anything special there. I knew that I got 75 points, but I haven't looked at any tables yet or anything. So
I was at 59 points.
Yeah. I do know that some of the players I was counting on have yet to really deliver. Partly players like Ward-Prowse, because it seems like the manager doesn't rate him as highly as David Moyes. So I'm afraid James Ward-Prowse is probably going to have to come off the team.
Yeah.
And then Gay, he didn't have a good week either, I believe. So yeah, a couple of players let me down.
Like at last minute, and he didn't play at all. It's like, oh, come on.
Well, there's always jeopardy. There's always jeopardy with the Manchester City players. I think in the past, he's always going to play Haaland because he's going to score, and he's always going to play Ederson. And then in the past, he's always played De Bruyne, but I think he's going to rest him more this year because he's picked up a few injuries and he's getting older and what have you. I would say Rodri. I had Rodri in the team at the start, and then he didn't play. But that's an injury. I think once Rodri's fit, he'll be in it every week.
Yeah.
And then the rest he rotates.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Coach, thank you again for your expertise and your insight and all this. Very fun talk with you, especially when we win, and 2 games, 2 wins, 6 points, and a great test on Sunday at Old Trafford versus United. So everybody, thank you for listening. We are very excited to keep bringing you these podcasts. The season is just underway. It's going to get very interesting. So again, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to everybody next time. Take care, everybody. Liverpool fans, thank you so much for listening to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and would greatly appreciate your support. Please leave a 5-star review and feel free to email us at tlrlfcpodcast@gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Till next time.